Hi, I'm Vinny Sohara. I make content about holistic self-love. And I'm doing Vlogmas. Today is day 4. I've had such a bad sleep. I'm absolutely exhausted. I was going to talk about my struggles sleeping today, but I thought maybe I'll share that another day. Let's go for something juicier instead. I'm going to talk about SEX, Sacred Energy Exchange. Yes, this is something I'm so passionate about. And yeah, I wanted to share my views on sacred sexuality. Before I dive into this, I want to let you know a bit about my perspective on sexuality. But before going into perspective on sexuality, I want to share that my view of content creation. I think content creation is like sharing your lens, your perspective with the world. For example, if you go to a life drawing class, it could be of a person, it could be of a vase of flowers, a bowl of fruit. Imagine the same object that everyone is looking at and studying and observing. Imagine there are 10 people in the class. Every single person is going to have a very different depiction of that object. And that's what content creation is all about. It's like sharing my view, my lens with the world. And sometimes when you're speaking about sexuality, people can, project their own lens onto you and think, oh, that's what it means. And then without seeing that it's actually a very, very personal expression. Of course, many topics, this applies to different topics of content creation as well. But sexuality is something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And it's very taboo, even though I believe it's one of the most important things, one of the most important aspects of life, and it affects lots of aspects of life. And I think it's really crazy how we don't acknowledge how powerful sexuality is. And I think a lot of people just have this very reductive perspective on sexuality, thinking that it's just about orgasm, seduction, and titillation, but it's much, much more than that. And this is something I have to deal with. A lot of the time I've been judged a lot by people who don't really know what I do, and they just think, oh, sex, it's really bad. Or if I share that I'm a sex toy educator, it's like, oh, they think it's very frivolous. But there's something very profound in sex toys. For example, I believe sex toys are experiences. They're not just objects. They can be objects that represent hope for someone who's never had an orgasm, someone who's disconnected from their body, a couple who've lost the spark. It's just such a vast topic. And I remember seeing on social media a few months ago, someone saying, sex is not sacred. And I thought, this sounds interesting, because I do think sex is sacred. So I was intrigued by this post and I went into it. And what was interesting was they were trying to say that if you say that sex is sacred, it's kind of making people feel guilty for maybe the not so sacred expressions of sexuality. But of course, sexuality is very personal. It's not to judge that one is more enlightened or better than the other. It's about really tapping into what you want, who you are, and what's going to make you feel better, what's going to bring you fulfillment, not just in the moment, but afterwards as well. Is a certain experience going to add value to your life? I think that's what it's all about, really. But of course, even casual experiences can add some kind of value. Every experience in life can add value, but it's all about having that awareness and intention. I think intention is very, very, very important. So going back to sacred energy exchange, this is my particular vision of sexuality, and it's something I really want to share through my content. And sometimes it's not as visible as I would like, because I think sometimes it's a bit, it's hard. You have to navigate a lot of censorship and hurdles online when you're speaking about sexuality. And so to actually be very frank about it can be quite challenging. I made a few notes. Can I read them? Anyway, so content creation. I'm going to share with you something from my book, Orgasmic Manifestation, which really sums up my perspective on sacred energy exchange when it applies to union or couples sex. I've had to start wearing reading glasses lately. I'm so tired. I've got no makeup on, so please excuse me. Also, I did notice on the video yesterday and a couple more that the quality of the video visually is really weird. It's not showing up the same on YouTube as it does on my phone. And this has been happening since I upgraded the software on my iPhone. I'm kind of regretting it now. I'm not really sure what's going on. It just seemed really kind of like there was some filter on it and there wasn't at all. So I'm hoping this is going to look okay. Anyway, here goes my reading glasses. Woo! Okay, so let me just share with you something that really sums up what I'm about. Okay, this is a chapter of my book, Orgasmic Manifestation, which is all about how to manifest with orgasm with sexual energy. This is something I'm very passionate about. I'm also kind of a bit reserved when speaking about this because I do think we're bringing together two taboo topics, the kind of to say witchcraft sounds crazy, but the kind of energetics of manifestation with sexuality. Because I mean, you got to like really know your audience. Obviously, sex is already taboo, but if you add this component of something that's a bit witchy, people just think you've lost your mind. Yeah. Anyway, multiply the magic. So I've got this quote here from someone, I can't even pronounce their name. So individually, we are a drop. Together, we are an ocean. Yeah, so if you are working with someone else, you can get even more power through your sexual manifestations. So this is just a paragraph I'm going to read to you. Sharing is caring. I've always perceived the act of penetration as a magical moment, particularly when a deep emotional bond emerges between the lovers. It is an intimate dance, a sublime fusion in which two bodies intertwine to form a single entity, exploring the depth of their connection and channeling the energy of a celestial force together. It is an almost indescribable experience imbued with pure and enigmatic magic. Yay! Anyway, hope you like that. That's something that I'm very, very passionate about. And that really does sum up how I experience union, which is when two bodies come together, two become one, like Spice Girls said. And that also sums up, a lot about me and how on my perspectives on sexuality, on dating and relationships. And that for me also can maybe explain why things like dating apps just don't do it for me, because I'm looking for that and that kind of union, that magic, that indescribable connection when two become three. It's not becoming one. I think there's this third entity that actually emerges when you actually come together with someone. Well, obviously there's there is a union, but there's this entity which is like the coming together, which is just really amazing. And then on a physical level, every movement made by one person is perceived by the other like you are one. I think that's super incredible. But I've always felt that even through the act of union, there is a connection to God. And I didn't really have the vocabulary for this when I first started experiencing these feelings. In fact, I was kind of rejecting my religion when I was first discovering sex, because I was brought up Catholic, and I think Catholicism can make you feel very guilty about enjoying your body. And but now I'm very spiritual, so I think there's a bit of a difference there, and there's not so much dogma in spirituality. It's more about I'm a bit pick and mix of different spirituality modalities, and then kind of like making it my own thing. But energetically, it's like I feel there's this connection to something bigger, and it's like a gateway to God. I said that in an interview in El País when I was interviewed about this book, and they took that as the headline, and some people were just like, what are you talking about? Not everyone is ready to kind of hear this kind of thing. Anyway, I've made some other notes down here. So I want to talk about some things that really kind of rub me up the wrong way or kind of clash with my opinions on sexuality. For example, recently on my podcast, I've interviewed 3 different experts who are experts in polyamory. And then someone wanted to propose a 4th person. And I thought, no, I just can't. Even though I do think polyamory is really interesting, I think there's a lot we can learn from people who have the conversations that many of us are not able or not willing to have when it comes to things like jealousy or just different protocols. I think there's a lot of unsaid rules in relationships, a lot of assumption. And whereas people who have, more alternative relationships are willing to have those conversations that can be unconventional, uncomfortable, and willing to kind of carve out their own personalized relationship design. That's super interesting to me. But at the same time, it's not my style of relationship. I would rather be using my platform to share something with a couple who are really invested in the cocoon of a couple, of a monogamous relationship, and elective monogamy, not the kind of a monogamy that's, oh, I'm chained down now, I've lost my freedom, not that kind of monogamy. The monogamy that is, or everyone, the assumed monogamy. I think there's something really beautiful about actually choosing your partner and not wanting to be with someone else. So I just had to say no to this fourth person on my podcast. And interestingly, on some of the polyamorous content that was on my podcast recently, someone left this this comment which I thought was really thought-provoking. They said something like, on media and even in the sex positive community, people are really pushing to kind of make polyamory seem like it's something normal when it's actually a niche thing. And I thought, yeah, that's so interesting. And I do believe that in my world, in my circles of the sex positive community, there's this kind of like assumption that people who are in this space are relationally liberal and sexually liberal, and that's really not true. It's not true for everyone. I think it's really good to have different representations of different relationship styles. I think that's really important, but I think don't knock the monogamous couple who are just trying to connect with each other. I think that is possibly the biggest representation or the biggest group out there, but it's often maybe the most neglected sometimes. So that's my opinion anyway. What else do I want to say? Also in the world of sacred sexuality, I do find that people's definitions of sacred are very different from mine. I mean, for example, kind of recently I went to a Tantra event. It was about non-violent communication. It was really interesting. There was nothing intimate in it. Well, it was intimate in a kind of non-sexual way. It was intimate in the way of sharing struggles, communication, listening, active listening, sharing things which were painful and holding space for those things. And it was very, very interesting. But then later on, there was this kind of event that continued, which had a bit more physical touch. Lots of people in a room and lots of touching. Obviously, there are very strict guidelines about consent, so people can actually only experience what they want. But that for me, I just think I don't want to have I don't want to be in a room with 50 people who could potentially touch me and all of that's happening. But I do also understand that some people just need that connection, because touch is very healing. But for me, when I think about sacred sexuality, I'm thinking about behind closed doors with someone who is genuinely invested in me and wanting to discover me beyond my physicality. It's all about transcending the physical, and I think that's the most beautiful part of sex. I mean, sex is definitely a physical thing. We cannot deny the body, but there is something more in it. There's something that it reaches the heart, the mind, and the soul. Which brings me on to, actually, I've just designed a course which is going to come out very soon. I need to record it, but I've just written scripts. I've written a course called Beyond the Body, The Art of Transcendental Sex. And this is especially for couples who really want to discover new depths with each other. It's for couples who may believe that things like BDSM or kink or even Tantra, or BDSM and kink could be a bit too weird and dark, and Tantra might be too woo-woo. So they're kind of more accessible ways to really experience intellectual, sapiosexual connections. Sexuality is more about being excited by the mind. And some people say, I'm a sapiosexual, and it sounds really good saying that you are attracted to people of a higher intellect, or you're attracted to intelligence. But if you tell those people, well, would you be attracted to someone who's not physically attractive but they're intelligent? They're like, oh no. So people say, so then you realize that they're not really super sapiosexuals. But I think there is a way of connecting with the mind where you can actually have a physiological response to conversations that are thought-provoking, without there being any touch. And that's what the juice of sapiosexuality is. And it's not easy to actually get to that point, but I've actually created a course that has exercises like this that kind of to get you into that space of having a very turned on mind, and also a turned on heart as well, because the heart is just, I think, as I mentioned in a previous video here, that I think I'm just becoming more and more demisexual, because demisexuality is more about needing to have an emotional connection to get turned on. Because otherwise, for me, if I don't have that, I just feel it's very transactional and empty. And for that, I've got 1,000 sex toys. I don't really need that. And that's another reason why I don't do dating apps, because for that just kind of boom, transactional, scratch the itch, I have sex toys. I want really amazing experiences when I'm with a person. I want mind-blowing heart. I want the heart engaged. I want my mind engaged. I want my soul engaged as well. And there's a real consequence for wanting those types of sexual encounters. It means that they are more and more difficult to find. Sometimes you can find that, or you can think that they are impossible. Nothing's ever impossible. It's all about just maybe working on yourself. That's maybe a whole nother video. I haven't even got it sorted out myself. But in general, it's about, knowing what you want, and knowing what you want and not letting your standards slip. But obviously your standards and taste can change a lot of the time. Something that might seem like a good idea today could be okay. You might have a different perspective in 2 weeks, and then things can shift all the time depending on what's happening in your life and different circumstances, etc. But in general, I am looking for sacred energy exchange, the kind of incredible experience that transcends the physical and connects me to God. Yeah, so that's what I want to share today, because I can't believe I've spoken for 17 minutes, but this is something that's very dear to my heart, and I feel that this is the essence of why I do what I do, and I don't feel that I have expressed it near enough, and not as much as I would like to. This is the beginning, maybe, of a new phase of my content. But when my course comes out, you'll be the first to know. I'll be definitely sharing it with you on here. And in the meantime, if you're interested in a more energetic type of way of enjoying sexuality, I recommend my book. The description, the link will be in the description below. And here's a little bit of it. It's so the tagline is: transform your life with your sexual energy. Pleasure is your power. Manifest your dreams with orgasmic energy. This is what I'm all about. This is why I chose this path, and this is why the instant gratification of sexuality that we see in society today is just not going to really scratch my itch. That doesn't mean to say that I think all of those things are bad. I'm still intrigued about, phenomena like, Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips and OnlyFans. I think it's good to know what's happening in society and what's real for a lot of people. And, just to have this awareness, especially if I'm in this space, I want to kind of understand my industry, but it doesn't mean I'm going to partake in these more extreme things. And also, I've never been a proponent of porn. I don't believe that porn can ever be ethical. I just think there's something else. There's another way to experience sexuality. I don't see enough representation of it, not as much as I would like. Anyway, so let me know what you think about this. I would love to know your opinion. And I'm going to upload this now, and I hope it doesn't go all weird. I'm not sure what's happening with the graphics or the visuals on this new software update that I did on my phone. But I'm not sure. It happened from the phone to the computer, so who knows. Anyway, it's the message that counts. That's my video for today. If you have anything to share on this topic, please leave a comment, because it's something that I want to talk about more and more and more. And if you want to check out my life upgrade meditation, check out the link in the description below. It is 100 powerful affirmations from the Life Wheel. I also have links to my book, to my podcast, and many other things below. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back tomorrow for some more Vlogmas. Mwah!